All right, guys. Hey, Paul McLean, welcome to the Monday Morning Wake Up Podcast. And I got a great treat for you today. I mean, my goal every single week is to bring value to you. I value you. I want to bring value. And so we got a phenomenal lineup of speakers with us today. We got Rochelle that's live here. Rochelle, good to have you in.
Me too, bro.
Yes. In fact, my favorite podcast, no offense to anybody else, is typically with Rochelle. That's the truth. And then we also have coming in Zoom, we've got Nico, and we've also got Eddie Turner. So good to have you guys on with us as well.
Thanks for having us.
You know, today's topic, I think it's one of those ones where it's not the easiest to kind of dive into and talk. It's more, I guess, it's not as empowering. It's not as, humorous. It's kind of deep. And we're going to talk about like the importance of life insurance. I mean, right now we're in the middle of Life Insurance Awareness Month. And I think this is such an important month for all of us, being the fact that this is your field. This is your line of work. This is what you service families with. But it's such an important thing. And I believe that when I look at top producers across the board, the one common trait they have is a real true awareness of the value of life insurance. They understand how important it is. They keep it on the forefront of their mind and they're moved by it. And the agents that kind of struggle, right? And they have some highs and some lows and they don't their close ratio might be a little lower. I think it's typically more of a transaction than it is going in knowing that you have a transformational position to serve that client and put them in a much better position. And so when we have our hands on this right, it makes a big difference. So guys, what does that mean? Well, today we're going to go through some real stories. You're going to hear from Rochelle. You're going to hear from Nico and Eddie about clients they've sat with, family, friends. And what served me well, when I got started in this business at the age of 19, just to be very open, I didn't have a real good grasp on the value of life insurance. It wasn't palpable to me. I didn't understand it. I couldn't make it real for people because it wasn't real for me. And I can never articulate something and bring more value to something that I see at the value I see it as, meaning that if I label something, I'm pretty much going to sell that label to everybody else. And I label life insurance as just, if you die, you need it. But it wasn't emotional. It wasn't on the forefront of my mind. And when I got on some podcasts, I remember listening to stories like you'll hear from Rochelle and thinking like, man, that's really good. And while this is important, and it almost kind of rattled me out of this transactional mindset and put me into more of a transformational mindset, a mindset that was more service, more selfless, not so selfish. Because to be open, guys, I didn't find life insurance because I was like, man, that just sounds like a great thing to do. I didn't grow up playing life insurance, man, for Halloween. And Halloween's right on the corner. It hasn't ran by my kids' mind. We're like, Dad, I want to be a life insurance agent. They just haven't done that. And so, but circumstances led me to this industry because I knew and I started hearing about how lucrative it was. And I think most of you on here, that's true for you. Like something took place and it ended up bringing you here, whether that was a success story, a testimonial, somebody you knew, somehow you got brought into the industry and it was a lot about the money you can make for your family. And by the way, that's okay. Like that's the way it should be. Like you got to provide for your family. But the agent that can quickly say, okay, this is about me making money, but how can I make it more about serving the families? How can I step into the client's house and have my mind so fixated on the fact that they desperately need this? And for me, I'd always kind of go through this 1 minute goal setting and literally visualize and imagine like looking at the lead, seeing the names and thinking like, what if I knew without a doubt that Bob wasn't coming home? Like he's not going to make it home. They don't know that, but I know that. When I go into the client's house, like then how do I articulate it? And what I'm going to say is important, but how I'm going to say it is going to matter so much. So now I say it with passion. So the client doesn't think it's pressure, they think it's passion. And it would kind of help me compartmentalize because stuff takes place. Rochelle's got life going on, Nico, Eddie, I got stuff going on, but I gotta take the eyes off myself, the commission I'm making, or the circumstances, situations, dilemmas, adversities I'm going through, personal. And at that point in time, put it in a box and put my mind and my focus right on that family. And you guys are going to hear that today. You're going to hear stories that when you get off this, I just encourage you, implore you to continue to think about these before you dial. Think about it when you go into your client's house, before you knock on the door. And I promise you, it's going to serve you well. It should be one of those routines that you do before you go serve a client or book an appointment or see a family. That's going to really position you up to work from a strong foundation, which it's about them, and everything you build in the home is going to be centered around them, and you'll be a lot more effective because of that. And so I want to start with Rochelle, as we kind of kick it off. Where I know you've got, now you've been in the business for quite a while. We did something like this a little while back, and you're really new. Now you've issue paid 20,000 plus a month, many months. You've done 40, 50,000 a month. You've got a great team that's growing, 250,000 plus that's growing each month. So you've seen things. Now, I know when you stepped into the business, you had, I think, a passion to help people more than I think most do. In fact, you went consecutively for a long stretch without any no sales. First, I thought you were lying. You're like, no, I haven't had a no sale yet. And I almost wanted you to be lying because I felt bad about myself. It was the insecurities. I was like, I thought I was good in the home. And then you go and sit with like 50 people and you don't have a no sale. But what I realized was that was really just validating what I just said. You cared about people, even though you needed the money. And I know your situation. You could even talk about that. But get into how did you become so good in the home? Because you weren't competent. You didn't know nothing about products, nothing about nothing. But you cared a lot, and that showed up in the results. Kind of go into that and, where your passion came from.
It came from knowing that I know the alternative. And I know that when my family, we had a lot of family pass away, and if you want me to touch up on that, I will, and not having the coverage. Like I look at my, in 2014, we lost 5 family members in 1 year, 5 in 1 year. We lost some that were distant family, but the biggest 2 that hit home were my dad and my brother. They died 9 months from each other. And it wasn't that my brother did something that just caused an accident. 20 days prior to that, we had to mourn and grieve the loss of my brother's mother-in-law. Now, mind you, my brother was supposed to be leaving for war, like going overseas, doing his part. Now he had to delay that and stay home and take care of her. There was no life insurance. And she, in a sense, was like not a single mom. She had great support. It's an amazing family, but they didn't have the money. It was an accident. A truck was illegally parked and she hit a car. I was sitting there right in front of my sister-in-law, seeing my brother before he departed, knowing my dad only had a year to live. And we get the call that her mom was killed tragically because a truck decided to run in for a soda pop. Like that's crazy. So there was that. And then it's like, holy smokes, like and I'm thinking my first thought, because even that young, I was like, okay, how about the life insurance? Well, there wasn't any. So my brother and my sister-in-law, who were really just the patriarchs of the family, had to come out of pocket and pay for that. He leaves, comes back. So my brother dies. So again, he has to return. He couldn't even make it over to war. Red Cross probably thought we were playing a joke at this point. My brother who had cerebral palsy, who took care of our entire lives. Now, mind you, if you're not familiar with cerebral palsy, it's where you have cognizance in your brain. There's 5 levels. There's cognizance in your brain, but you cannot do your motor functions. So we fed him, changed him, bathed him. His way of life was dependent on us. And I'm going to cry because my mom found him dead, and we ended up getting him to the hospital to get him on life support. And we tried to keep him alive for the 3 days to get my brother home. And we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. We just told Tim, keep the best memory you have of David. That was it. And then he dies. And, I look over, I'm like, where's the life insurance? Well, there wasn't any. There's no life insurance. There's nothing set aside because we knew this is going to happen. Well, again, not only that, but when he passed away, the state of California gives you some money, to take care of him. We're very poor growing up, and you rely on that $1,200 to pay. That's a big deal. That's your mortgage. It's utilities. That's whatever it is. Well, that's gone too. And the money they gave my mom to take care of my brother, that's gone too. So you're looking at $2,400 a month gone with his passing on top of him passing. And then 9 months later, my dad dying, and it's the same story. My dad went in for a toe infection and died of a heart attack. He didn't take care of himself. He had several health issues, but to have all this happen, and then and I think that when I came into this business, it was at the right time, because you had been talking to me about this for years prior, before my marriage, before, even straight out when you had gotten in, when you were with the other deal, you were like, hey, I'm doing this. And it wasn't the good fit. And I feel like God had a calling to say, this is your time to where you need to do this, because had it have been then, I can say shoulda, coulda, wouldas then. Now I'm saying when you die, this is the reality that's going to happen. You get Social Security, your dad takes care of you, they get money taking care of. This is how your family survives, is you. whether you like it or not. This is a monumental part. And to be able to have real conversations based upon realities that have happened to me. And I speak highly of other people's stories, obviously, because they're all influential, but to have these conversations with people and say, I don't care that I'm hurting your feelings, because the one thing you're going to appreciate is after you do this, that sigh of relief, because whether you feel like it's strenuous now on your heart or it's a little financially uncomfortable, we're going to make sure that when you pass away, your family's not going through what I did. Like, we didn't get a chance to call my dad's life insurance agent. He had 4 pieces of jewelry in a Mazda. So we had 4 surviving kids. We each got a piece of jewelry and we put together to cremate him and put him in a coffee can, which still sits in my house today. Like, and even still, like, to go from that to that to that, like, we didn't have money set aside. Like, we didn't. $1,200 is a lot of money. So we all had to scrape and save together. And then you don't get the chance to recover the way you should. Because I remember dropping my kids off at school a week after he died and losing it, like having a mental breakdown driving on the road, because it finally clicked. It finally hit. Everybody was home. Everything's gone. The difference that it makes having the coverage and not having the coverage is being able to break down with your family, being able to be there for them. Because I love, as much as this sounds morbid, I love when families call me with a death claim, because it means that they actually did what they were supposed to do. They did the right thing by their family. So when I sit with clients, when we sit with clients, we know the value behind what we're doing. It's protecting their legacy, making sure that they're not a car wash. Because my dad had the biggest funeral I've ever seen. He filled up 3 rooms and we still had to pass a hat for his legacy. It's not fair.
God, I mean, I'll tell you what, that's one of the best ways I've ever heard it articulated, as far as the grieving process. Cause I think it's easy to know the loss of income that comes, but what might even matter even more than that in that moment, I remember you saying that, and you said this a while back, and I was like, that I used it in the home many times. Like, when somebody passes, they go through that, oh my God, like that, oh my God factor. Like, what do we do? And the fact that they have something in place allows them to come together as a family in that time, grieve properly and go through that process that's necessary, needed, and essential for healing to move forward. And so when that's interrupted, on top of having the financial disarray, I mean, it's really something that's such a big deal. And Rochelle, I think when I hear you communicate it, there's so much passion there. And I could I was almost sitting there thinking, like, what if I was a client and you were talking to me and I'm in a home right now, and you're talking to me just like you were right now about the stories and stuff. And I was thinking, how do I feel right now? And I felt like I was talking to somebody that was very authentic, that really cared and was going to stand up for me. It wasn't like being bold or like direct. I didn't get it. It was just like, I care about you and I'm going to stand up for you and tell you the truth, not because it benefits me at all, but because I care about you and I've gone through this. And this is God using something that was tragic, something that was unfortunate, the timing and how close it was. It's him using it for good, where I can now tell you this story so you can sidestep what I had to endure going through that process. And I think that's it. I just felt like secure and confident that I was dealing with somebody that was going to have my back. And that's what people are looking for. That's what they want. They want to know, do you have my back? Like, this is something that they can't look at. It's not tangible. It's something that you create this forecast, this forethought for them, that they can see what's going to happen when it's going to happen. And you articulating stories and what have you makes it so much more impactful. Like, Rochelle, do you think that, being in the beginning of the business, you were getting started and you like were so good, your close ratio hasn't gotten bad. It's just so good. Like, you can run a lot less appointments than most and write more production because your close ratio is so good. Now, you run more appointments than most. But I'm saying, like, that's why you write so much production. When you sit with the client, how important is it in the beginning, when you didn't know a lot about what to do, what works, what doesn't work, just to go in and have that authenticity? Like, how important was that for you? What role did it play?
Well, my dad growing up, I live in a split home. So you're going to get two different variations of like how we communicate with each other. Cause I grew up, I lived primarily with my dad during the splitting years. And then you have like my twin sister who lived with my mom. So communication is a lot different as far as like how we handle confrontation and hard to talk scenarios. So I try to be as open as honest with people as I possibly can. And I don't know if you remember in high school, we had a teacher named Miss Francis. She put a quote of the week up on the board. And one of them was by Charles Schultz. It said, "The truth hurts, but the duration of a lie hurts so much more." And I've always taken that to heart because even if somebody hurts my feelings with the truth, I'm going to respect them for being honest with me. And good, bad, or indifferent, the truth is something that we're not comfortable telling most of the time. But once we hear it to ourselves, we can respect the person that told them the truth. So I try and talk to people the way I would want to be talked to. And mind you, it doesn't come across as gentle as most would all the way, but there's good precedence behind it. I always want them to know I have your best interest. Like you said, like being able to be in their corner and making it very clear that I am here for you. I am here for your situation. So being brand new, it wasn't about like what product to write. Cause I called you all the time in the home, just solidifying. And I really gravitate on the fact that 4 products are going to match your clients. Perfect. So I called you in the home after I had this communication with them to find out what we're going to either cover some, most, or all the mortgage. We're going to create a legacy. We're going to protect your home. We're going to make sure that your family's uncomfortable, or we're buying time. We're either, and that's really what we're looking at when it comes down to clients, like especially in the senior community, or they were doing an elderly mortgage protection. We're really buying time. How much time do you feel you need? So I picked apart a lot from what you said from podcasts and trainings and FFL Mentor, and you pick it apart and you just really have to become eclectic as to not what you're saying, but how you're saying it, because people respect that more. And when they have the reality of it, product is just second. This is just the second guess of it. Okay, here's basic information. They're on some medication. Clearly, we're doing a whole life policy because that's what it says. Okay, so we're going to look at protecting some time here. I don't know which product it is. And in my mind, I'm like, holy smokes, I'm going to call Paul. And that's what I did. I call you and I put my phone on speakerphone, which has made it tremendously easy for agents. I was sick with 102-degree fever yesterday, and I was able to close clients via text message yesterday with some of my newer agents because they had that formality. They had the ability to connect with their clients and say, I'm just not sure about the product. So whatever you were doing is helping, because our agents
Right.
were able to grow a little bit more. So, like you said, the why factor, and I'm going to say that really quick, because if you haven't experienced death and you haven't made it clear to clients, or even if you have, I'm sure you can relate that you go through 3 things when somebody passes away, especially somebody close. And I call it the why factor, because the first thing you go through is why. Like, why did this happen? What's going on? The second is, who do I tell? I need to call my mom, I need to call my brother, I need to call my cousin, I need to call this. I need to inform people of this person's passing. And the third is, what's next, which is the biggest thing. This is why we have our job is number 3. So even if you're brand new, the why factor is like, why? Like, oh my God, like what happened? Like, you mean you drop to your knees, you cry, you lose it, and then your adrenaline kicks in and you're like, I got to notify, I got to figure out, I got to protect, because your body innately wants to protect whatever's going around. And then the last one is what's next. This is where we come in handy, guys. This is where we have our job. This is why family first life agents are so monumental compared to everybody else, because we underwrite, we don't sell. And if somebody says I sold a client, I kind of want to backhand them a little bit, because you didn't sell anything. You're not selling vacuums or knives or cups or whatever it is. You are underwriting them. You're solidifying their legacy. And you are step number 3 in every client's life. Do you realize that? You are step number 3. So your job is just to do right by them. And if you're not sure, when in doubt, call out. We have 7,000 active agents. Call one of them.
Rochelle, I think, for one, you doing that, it position your agents to kind of follow suit. And that's what people don't realize. Like, sometimes when you overstep something that you've heard repeatedly, like this works, this is how you go out and write substantial business, this is what the top producers are doing. And you say, I don't want to do that, but you're building a business as well. You're going to, the problem or the negative effect of not doing what works, it compounds when you hire more agents. because they're going to duplicate what you're doing as well. And so you have that negative effect compound. But because you did it, it was just easy for agents to do what you were doing, because people do what people see. People do what people do. So they're going to duplicate that. And, as you go through everything, Rochelle, like I want to make this point, I want to bring on Nico, but when people freak out, so to speak, as far as when somebody passes and they go through that emotion where they're just, why this happened? And they're going through all these crazy emotions that kind of hit them at the same time, like almost that overwhelming feeling where you just shut down, you want to throw up, your body's reacting to what your mind is trying to understand, which is almost an impossibility to really grasp it. Right.
Yeah.
Our job as a field underwriter, an agent going in there and sitting with these clients, our job is to paint the picture, ask the questions where they can really kind of imagine that taking place and have that feeling in that moment, because that's making them aware of life insurance. That's rattling them, so to speak, to say, hey, I know today everything looks good. I know today you feel healthy. I know today you're 30. I know today all these things, but let me go through the financial inventory. Let me ask you these questions. And if you do a good enough job, not being surface, but going deep with those questions, you're going to have an experience with that client where they actually feel that they almost experience some sort of degree of that overwhelming feeling of that happening. And if you can do that, you're effective. And then when they feel that and they're almost like, what the heck is next? You walk into, I've got 3 different options to show you. We can't make a decision today, but if you were to qualify, which one of these makes sense? And they see the what's next in front of them. And that I've never heard it put that way. And that was so good. And I think that in today's world, as artificial as it's become, which we all agree about that. You go on social media, it's like, man, it's a bunch of crap. Everybody looks like they're all-star parents, all-star. I mean, hey, be clear. I know that too. I didn't post anything today about how my kids freaked out. Penelope wouldn't even get dressed. She was like running down the stairs naked. I was like, sweetie, it's not naked day at school. You got to get clothes on. She's throwing, but I didn't post that, but I'll post something cute about her. So I get that. But the benefit of it being so artificial is that when you walk in with a high level of authenticity, it just trumps anything else. They really don't care how long you've been doing this. They almost don't even think about products. They don't know. All they know is, wow, this person isn't like what I experience every day, all day when I bump into people and how's it going? Hey, it's going great. On social media, you're authentic, you're real. And that's what, translates to helping that family, because they want to deal with people like that. And I think that's a big deal. All right, Nico, if you can, I got a question for you, man. So you've been in the business for quite a while. I think that it's easy for a lot of agents when they get started, because we have leads, they can sit back and think like, well, I'm just going to work leads. Or an agent that says, well, Paul, I'm trying to get this thing going, but I don't have any lead money. I'm struggling to get things moving. To me, I'm like, how does that make any sense? Because a lot of IMOs, they don't have any leads, right? And that's why the agent can make a lot of money for about 33 days, and then they run out of cousins, sisters, aunts, and uncles, and that's where the hardship is created. But for the first 33 days, they do well. Why? Because they reach out to people. Now, there's 2 ways to approach it. One is, I don't want to be the person bugging my friends or family, which I think really reflects the value that you see in what you're providing. Or the other one is, I got to talk to everybody I care about and help them as I'm working leads, because leads is giving me a book of business to work immediately. How do you see that? Like when you got in the business, were you helping friends, family, and people? And what was your approach to that? And then, if you can also kind of get into, why in life insurance is so important and how is it so real for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right now, as Rochelle was speaking, I was having flashbacks and my heart became really heavy because I was thinking about just when I first started out, how I didn't have any, death claims or stories to really sit with the client and explain, any scenario of someone passing away. I did at a younger age. I had a lot of family members that were passing away, but I wasn't really too involved of any of the financial parts because I was really too young. But in regards to when I got started into the business, I was talking to everybody because I knew it was something that was real. It existed. Like I said, when I was young, I did experience it. And the story I used to tell everybody, Paul, is kind of, it was because, a lot of people out here might not have any death claims or have any experience in that. So there's always a way you can borrow a story or just use a scenario. So what I used to do is when I used to sit with people, I used to tell them, imagine, because a lot of times I'll get, that common objection, Paul, like, I want to think about it, right? So when people used to tell me that, I said, okay, well, let's sit down, let's think about that. Let's say that, you're having an event, you're having a party, and your husband says, hey, honey, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get some ice at the grocery store. And he goes out, he gets his ice, and you're waiting, you're looking at the clock, and an hour passes by, you're calling his phone, and he's not answering. And you're like, hey, you're starting to get mad. Like, where's this guy at? Did he stop at the bar? Like, what's going on? So 2 hours pass by, and you give him a call again, and still nothing. And then finally 4 hours pass by, and you get a knock on the door. And there's 2 officers. And they say, I'm so sorry to inform you, but your husband was involved in a horrible car accident. He didn't make it. And that look on their face, like, you can tell that hit home. And that story, I used to tell it so much, it actually became a story that it actually happened to a close family member of mine. It was actually a friend, but I consider him like a brother. He was actually one of my first death claims. And he was very young. He was in his mid-20s, and he was driving home from work, and he was only a block away. And a guy was drunk and ran a red light and hit him dead on, put him in a coma, and he didn't come out of it. And when I sit with clients, I use that example because, most people think that they're going to live forever, right? And as someone that's young, you think that, you're indestructible. You can go out and, you can do anything and nothing's going to ever happen to you. But, no matter what age, no matter what situation, no matter, your race, death is not prejudice. They'll come after you in any way possible, whether it's terminal illness, an accident, COVID happened right now. There's a lot of cases going on. Yeah, it's something that it hit homes for everybody. I mean, it's going to happen. So with him and that story, I got to experience firsthand how powerful life insurance is. I got to deliver that check. It was a 6-figure check. Now, the family, while they're suffering that emotional loss, they didn't have to worry about financials, Paul. That check actually took care of the mom, the dad, not having to go to work, not having to worry about, them not being able to grieve for their son or how they're going to bury him. That's something that triggers something for me. And, when I first started not having leads, going through my warm market was a big deal, making sure that all my family members and friends, and they all knew the value of life insurance, especially after that death claim. It put another fire under me. Now with leads, one of my favorite leads are, the mailers for final expense. And the other day on the CRM, I saw, about a few months back, I saw a bunch of age leads. So I jumped on, I bought a bunch of them. There was about 100 of them. And I started dialing them. And I was dialing them, and I kept getting people answering, and they were telling me almost the same thing. They were letting me know that they were asking, hey, I'll call John, for example. And I say, John, is John there? And they'll say, no, what's this regards? And I say, hey, he filled out a request for life insurance. Oh, did he actually get it? And I'm like, no, that's the reason why I'm calling. It's still pending in my system. And they'll say, oh, John actually passed away. And man, I got that answer several times, Paul, where it just started putting a dagger in my heart. I'm like, man, this is, we got to do a way better job of resolving leads, door knocking people, calling them. I mean, doing whatever it takes to make sure, because there's people out there raising their hands, asking for this. So, I mean, my experience, I've seen it across the board, just every situation you can think of, and one thing that I like to touch on too is it has living benefits, not just a death benefit, it has living benefits as well. I had another situation with a lady who, she had 3 small kids, and she was diagnosed with cancer, and she had a life insurance policy, and she was able to access her living benefits. And unfortunately, she didn't survive, but she was able to have that money, and she took a vacation with their kids. They went and had fun. And the last memory of their, the children with their mother was happy times. And it's just things like that it makes this business, so much more sweeter for us, in the sense of we're out there we're soldiers on the field. We're helping out families. We're just making sure that, even though when that the worst time in someone's life, we can be that guardian angel for them and just make sure their financials are set away.
I love that, dude. And I think when you go into it, man, like your perspective and how you see yourself and how you see the client, it's the right perspective to go serve them. And I want to just reiterate real quick the fact that we don't sell knives and stuff like that, where, I mean, that'd be difficult to go in and kind of compartmentalize it and become so passionate about it. And that's one of the benefits we have in the life insurance industry, is that when we're more aware of the importance and value, we can help clients become more aware of the importance and the value of it. And so, Nico, those stories that you tell, like, for one, I just wanted people not to, I don't want anybody to miss that when they say, I want to think about this. Well, you know, I agree. Let's think about this. Let me ask you this, dude, that's so good as far as like relating to them. Like, you're right. Let's think about this, connecting with them. Right. And then let me ask you this, and then you ask a question and go into a story, because guys, stories sell. Like if somebody says, man, I hate public speaking, what's the best thing you can do? Get up and tell a story. Talk about yourself, your family. It's so much easier to communicate that than anything else when you tell your story. And so when you're sitting with clients, if you're just telling stories and when they're real and true, and I just want to, like, Nico, you, when you told the story, there was a lot of detail to that. Why do you give so much detail? Does it matter to give all those details and specifics when it comes to the story, like the name and knocking on the door and stuff like that? Why is that effective for you?
It gives them that visual. They're actually visualizing as I'm speaking. All those details, hearing the door knock, the cops showing up, just every little detail I'm giving. I want them to picture that. I want them to feel it right here. So, and when I do tell a story, I can see it. They get thrown back. And like I said, if you don't have a story, at least you can adopt that story in the sense of, let's take a look at that. And that's generally what happens. If someone goes out and there's a situation of a family member or friend, they pass away, that news is typically going to come from a police officer. So they're going to show up. There's generally going to be two. They're going to knock on that door and they're going to give that news. And, just having them visualize that happening to them, it's something that's like, what do you have to think about? You want to make sure if your husband doesn't come home, or if your kid or whoever your family member, whatever the situation is, the funeral, the bills, whatever financials that are going to be taken away at that moment, we got that covered. You don't have to worry about that. You can grieve in peace. All that emotions, you can take time off of work, or you don't even have to worry about going back to work, whatever the situation is. But we just want to make sure that, you don't have to worry about financials. That's my main goal, just not having to worry about the financial situation and just allowing people to grieve with their loved ones.
Yeah. Well, I think when you look at what we're doing, I mean, we're helping safeguard the two most devastational things somebody go through. One, the loss of a loved one. And then the second is a financial devastation. Anybody that can raise their hand and say, man, I've lost somebody, you would say I would take about anything over that. Like, I mean, when things you think are going bad and then you lose somebody, it gives perspective. That's the hardest thing. And then somebody has said, hey, has anybody gone through a financial disarray where you can't provide for your family? Like you're literally sitting there stressed and worried about, how do I make payments this month for these expenses? Oh, that sucks. That's difficult. When you marry those two together, I don't know if there's anything that could be worse than that. And that's what, Nico, you're doing, going out there serving these families. And so, guys, the thing is this: when you're telling a story, the more detail you give, the more emotion you bring. And so you want to add names and ages, different situations like that, because it makes it real for them. And I think that, Nico, it's easy as an agent getting started. I know I did it, where I would magnify the things I didn't want. Like if I got an objection, I would just like talk about it and go into detail and depth, and I'd speak too much. Or about the voided check, I'd give them like 19 reasons why I needed to get it, opposed to just being assumptive. Like, hey, Nico, go and grab your voided check. We'll see if we get you qualified. And what I realized was I was making the things I don't want more of. I was getting more of it because I was magnifying it. I was getting in depth on it. That I needed to stay surface on surface things that didn't allow me to go out there and enable me to help more families, which was making things like a voided check, banking information, an objection. I want to think about it, making that such a big deal, where I was combative to being surface on that, almost like not giving it merit. And then the things that would build value, I would go in depth with, like the stories and the details. Because now what you did was this, they wanted to think about it, but then you just increased the value significantly. You related to them, and then you enlarged the value. And people buy when value exceeds price and when assumptiveness is married to it. So if I've exceeded the price with additional value through my story, and then I just assume the sale by saying, so Nico, I'm sure you would agree that it makes financial sense to get this in place for your family, because we don't know when that officer is going to knock on the door. And so go ahead and grab your driver's license. We'll see which qualify. And that's how you marry that to the value that you just proposed through that story. And I think it's just so good, man. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
Eddie, I got you, brother. You might have to hit unmute. There you go.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, dude, good to have you on, bro. I mean, I kind of know your story pretty well, dude, and it's impacted me, and I've used it as I've gone out there and talked to different agents and clients, because this is something where, Family First Life, we always say, Family First Life, the mission is to go out there and put agents in the best possible position to win, to put our families of the agents first, and then put to the clients of the families we serve first. And I think that we get attracted to FFL because we can see how we can be put first. High compensation, nobody comes close to it. Lead availability, we've got more vendors than all IMOs put together times 3. More direct mail options. I mean, all these things, best renewals, no contract, free training from producers that write $100,000 a month every month. All that kind of stuff goes into it. Integrity. But a lot of times we could be focused on that and not focus on the whole part of in the client's families first and how important that is. How have you used stories and what you've gone through to best serve clients when you go out and meet with them each and every week?
Yeah, so I'll touch on kind of my story, kind of, what's happened with me and my son. And then I want to get into what we did to kind of help plan, with my son. And then I'd like to kind of talk about where I am now, right? That kind of, I think we'll shed light on a lot of different things that I'm dealing with. And when I meet with families and the approach that I take, right? And so a lot of the approach that I take is more of let's plan, right? Let's plan for the unknown, and plan for things that we think that aren't going to happen. And a lot of times when I was younger, I thought it was bulletproof, right? Nothing was going to happen to me, and so I had some life insurance in place, but not a whole lot, and got into a situation where we were able to adopt my son. And that came about, like, it was a bittersweet moment in life, right? Because to have the ability to adopt our son, my wife lost her cousin, which was like a sister to her, right? And so Brittany, who was my son's birth mom and my wife's cousin, was killed in a car accident, right? She had no life insurance, nothing like that. Well, 4 months prior to that accident, my son's biological father, Chris, who was a detective in California, one of the police stations in Southern California, actually died in a separate car accident, right? 4 months later, or 4 months earlier, I'm sorry. And so, Brittany didn't have time to really start dealing with the insurance from that. She ended up passing away in a car accident. And so learned a lot about the probate code, right? We were actually in court trying to get guardianship on my son before we even had to bury Brittany. And so going through that whole process, once we got guardianship of him, right, which is what happens first with probate code, and then we started looking into all the paperwork, right? What insurance was available? Did Brittany have any? Did Chris have any? So I learned a lot about life insurance then, right? And, we would think, with Chris being a detective, have quite a bit of life insurance through his work, he would have policies on himself. Well, because of the nature of how he died, with toxicology reports, accident reports, and whatnot, what we thought was there wasn't there. Right. And I wouldn't have known that had we not gone through and started making the calls and helping to kind of process that paperwork. Right. And so it's very important. One of the most important parts of our job is helping, people that we sit with when something does happen, process the paperwork, right? Go through that process. And you got to have somebody educated, that's going to take the time to make the calls, call the insurance carriers, and go through that stuff and help get the claims actually paid. Right. So we were able to get my son, and one of the first things that we did was, me and my wife, at that time, it was about 10 years ago. Now we're healthy, right? I mean, I was a college athlete. My wife is in really good shape. And so we started putting life insurance in place for my son. Right. One of the policies that we got for my son is an IUL through a company that we now use, North American. And so my son is set up for life, right? Like, I'm not going to have the same thing that happened previously happen again. Like, my son is set up through an IUL that me and my wife pay into every month. We pay till he's 18. It's going to give him money for college. It's going to give him money to help buy a house later on in life through these illustrations. It's going to help him pay off a house later in life. And then when he goes to retire, I think based on the illustration, it's going to pay my son $180,000 a year in retirement, right? And then when he passes, it's a legacy policy that he'll pass on $2 or $3 million to his family, right? And so we've taken the time to put policies like that in place to make sure that he's taken care of. And when I sit with other families, a lot of other families don't know that we can plan so far out, right? We can really sit with families and help them plan for the future and make sure that the next generations are taken care of, right? Now, dealing with my current situation, right? Why is life insurance a little bit different to me now? Well, I've always been super healthy my whole life, never had any problems, and like I said, I was a college athlete. I was always, in relatively good health, right? And I still consider myself in relatively good health, a little heavier than I used to because of desk jobs and whatnot, but still in good health. Well, what I found out over the last couple of months is something that runs in my family that my grandmother had, my mom had, which is, I have a basically a problem, issue with my thyroid, version of thyroid cancer, Graves' disease, right? And so I'm dealing with that. And so if I wanted to go out and get life insurance right now, I can't get it, right? I mean, I can't get what I would need or what I would think I would need right now because of this issue that I have going on. And so every day, it's been an eye opener. Every day I'm dealing with this, hopefully that I can, and I'm confident that I can overcome it. My mom and my grandma are still alive, and they both had to deal with it. But it's changed how I sit with people all the time. Oh, I'm fine. I'm healthy. Nothing's going to ever happen to me, right? I thought that too. But then life happens, right? Stuff that's hereditary that runs in our family starts to come in, right? And then you got to start dealing with that, the effects of that, going to do the blood work and getting the testing. Hopefully that stuff like that doesn't spread. Hopefully, you can beat it, you can overcome it. And so now it's a lot different, right? When I sit with people, I have a lot more urgency when I talk to people about life insurance, telling them, look, this is where I'm at. I never thought I would be here in my life, right? I never thought I'd be in this situation. I always thought, I would live a long, healthy life, and I wouldn't have any issues. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I've pretty active. I try to do a lot of different things, and now I'm dealing with stuff that's hereditary. Right? I had no control over it. Right? It's in my genes, it's in my DNA. I was going to get it at some point. Right? And so when I started looking or talking to people about life insurance and let them know, hey, this is where I'm at. This is the story that I've had. Right? Now's the time, right? When we're 15, 20 years, down the road, you don't know what's going to happen. But if you're healthy, right, now's the time to buy. Now's the time to start planning, because you never know when your ticket gets punched. And when your ticket gets punched, your time's up. I mean, it is what it is. And I hate to put it that way, but, I've seen it like firsthand. I've seen it in my family. I've seen it with, my son. Like it's real. It's funny when you talk to my son, and he's had to grow up a lot faster than most kids. Like, death to him is black and white. Like, it's real. Most other people in the world, kind of see it as, it's going to it is what it is. They don't really have to deal with it. But man, like when you really have to deal with it, you want to make sure that the life insurance is one of the tools that you have in place to help deal with the financial responsibility that comes from somebody losing their life, right? Because somebody is going to, anytime somebody loses their life, there's going to be some bills that have to get paid, and somebody's going to have to fit that bill, whoever it is, right? It's either you're going to pass it along to somebody else, or you're going to have something in place that takes care of it and takes care of your family. And don't get me wrong, like paying the premiums, and it's, yes, we'd all like to spend that money on other things, right? But I'm telling you, if you can make that selfless act and sacrifice and say, hey, I'm going to put this in place now so other people don't have to sacrifice later. I'm telling you, it's one of the most selfless acts that you can do in your life to make sure that those that you love and care for the most are taken care of when you're gone. Right.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, I'll tell you what, man, I just want to say thank you for sharing the story, your story, because I think at the end of the day, it's those things that rattles everybody and puts us in this state of mind where we can go and best serve people. Because if you want to go out there and take your business to the next level, it's got to be about others. There's no person out there that's, I always think it's comical when somebody says, man, you guys talk about all the money you're making. Like this person wrote $100,000 in personal production, or the FFL is doing 400 million a year. And I said, man, that's great if it was home, one of the companies that you're selling hula hose and shovels, but man, that reflects how many families were served. So if Rochelle goes out and helps, 50 families and makes 50,000, she served more people. She helped more people than anybody else. That's what matters. And so these stories right here, Eddie, like when you talk about not knowing it was going to happen, see, if it's real to us, we can make it real to them. If you want to increase your ability to serve people, you got to build your conviction on what you're servicing them with. And so when you go out and you have these stories in your mind, and I would just write them down, keep them in the forefront of your mind, rehearse them. I didn't have to go through something personal to not have strong conviction in the service I was providing clients, because I would remind myself of these stories we just heard today. I would write them down before I go to the client. I would put my mind on that, because it would empower me to go out there and best serve them and put my eyes on them long enough to actually make a difference for that family that I was called to serve. And so, guys, I hope this stuff helps. I hope these stories help. If you're not telling stories in a client's house, you got to tell. It doesn't have to be your story. Just tell stories. It'll make it real for them. The goal is to get them to live in these stories so you can take something that's not tangible and make it as tangible as possible. So, guys, thank you for joining. Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Rochelle. Guys, go out there, make it a massive week. Stay strong, be steadfast, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, what's going on, guys? We are picking once again one winner from last week's video featuring Eric Schmidt to win $250 worth of lead credit. Just comment on the video below, and then next week you'll be entered to win $250 worth of leads. Leads are amazing. They're the life force of your business. I don't know why you wouldn't want $250 worth of free leads, but hey, that's just me. But anyway, comment down below to be entered in next week's drawing. But without further ado, let's see who won this week. Queen Lana, give me motivation, continue. That's like 6 words. 6 words, just one. Queen Lana to win $250 in leads. That's pretty incredible. That's pretty incredible. Queen Lana, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Get in touch with Victoria to get your leads. Guys, subscribe, comment, like this video, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with whoever you think would benefit from it. But until next week, we love you guys. Be strong, stay steadfast. We'll see you next week. Take care, y'all.